Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. Today we have our great friend, Cody Smith. How you doing today, Cody?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Just glad to be sitting here with you guys. Got a good workout in.
Man.
Got a nice cold line and Kugels going here. We're good to go.
Starting off good. Also, we have John, as usual. John, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, man.
That's good. That's good. Hey, so before we get into a little bit about Cody, we're going to go ahead and just jump into the beer of the day. John is staring at his beer bottle pretty hard.
Man, I'm like, can I pronounce this? But I think you heard it earlier. I got a Liner Lugels, a Summer Shandy, which is beer brewed with honey and natural lemonade flavor. So far, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good, but you really have to get close because it's a paper label and it's wet, so it's kind of hard to read.
I literally drink this beer all the time during the summer when I do have one, and I never knew it had like honey and stuff in it. I was
Really?
like, oh, it's good beer. It's got a little lemon taste.
Yeah, it's I can taste a little bit of the honey, but it's definitely more lemon than anything else.
Tastes like an unfiltered beer, too. I like that.
Yeah,
it's good.
yeah. This is actually pretty good. It's really light. What's the alcohol percentage?
4.2.
4.2. Oh, we ain't getting drunk tonight. Thanks a lot, Cody.
No, man, we gotta be even keel and know what we're doing and know what we're talking about. Gotta bring the value for these people.
Exactly.
I don't know about that, but hey, so real quick, like I said earlier, we have our good friend Cody Smith. A little bit about Cody. He runs the Create Yourself podcast. If you guys haven't listened to that, it's a great show. He also is the owner of Pacific Northwest Jiu-Jitsu, CrossFit 7 Cities, which are connected together. It's the school that we go to and the gym that I coach at. He's also a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai fighter, former MMA amateur fighter, right? He was the original champ as an amateur, right? Didn't you hold the belt in 2 different organizations, 2 different weight classes? And
It's so weird to hear like my accolades.
Yeah.
I actually held it in 3 different ones.
Oh, my God, the triple champ.
Yeah, so I held a middleweight title and then 2 different light heavyweight titles. And yeah, it was a good time.
Dang. Also, what was your record? What was your record?
I was 8-0.
8-0.
Oh, man, I wish I could say I was 8-0.
Oh
I'm
my
actually
God.
undefeated in competition, like jiu-jitsu and MMA, which is why I should probably just stay retired.
I was
because
about to say-
I
out
was
of
about to say, do
retirement.
not come out of retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, he's like I said earlier, he's the owner of CrossFit 7 Cities. As a CrossFit coach, he has also produced 2 regional athletes and 1 athlete that actually made it to the 2017 CrossFit Games. So if you guys don't know what CrossFit Games is, in the world of sport CrossFit, the CrossFit Games is the highest ranking thing you can do in CrossFit sport. Right. And so it's very selective, super hard to get into. And Cody's actually had someone go there. Also, she was nationally ranked weightlifter and all around badass.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like when you really think about it, when you really think that, Casey was able to get to the CrossFit Games.
Yep.
I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are trying to get that accolade. And the fact that, like, when you really think about it, the percentage of people that are actually going to go to the CrossFit Games, to see that she was able to overcome and do that is actually really insane. And I guess I don't really give it much thought and really sit down and think about how big of a deal that really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's huge, and it's a huge accomplishment. And I'm sure that's something that she'll remember that forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was super cool knowing that she made it to the CrossFit Games, knowing her and knowing she's from a small town in Kitsap County.
Right.
Like, and then here she is at the CrossFit Games.
It was cool to be in the stadium and see like the gym's name on her jersey, and then like when she runs out on the floor to hear like Casey Campbell of CrossFit 7 Cities. Like for me, that was as a coach being there with her is like the pinnacle, something that from day one of coaching, like how cool would it be if I had a person in CrossFit?
Yeah,
Games?
absolutely. And then you're in the background and you're like fanboying over all the other coaches and athletes and
I
stuff.
wasn't though, and I actually talked about this on an episode when I got interviewed for the first time. The guy's name is Tommy. He has a podcast called the T. Clark Nutrition Podcast.
Is the T for like testosterone? Like
maybe, yeah. But so he asked me like, how was your time at the games? And I was like, I think he was expecting the conversation to go somewhere differently, because my time at the games as a coach was actually a very
stressful.
Well, not only was it stressful because she was stressed out, but it was pretty much a letdown for me when I got to meet some of these coaches. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're like, man, you seem so cool online, and I love your programming.
And you're totally not.
You're totally not.
Yeah.
But you got to think the situation too, right? Like they're not really there to meet and greet and whatnot. But
well, I'll tell you a story. So, there was a specific coach that I followed his podcast. I consumed his content. I've even did several of his programs, and then he had an athlete on the floor, or he had several athletes there, obviously.
Yeah.
One of them, he had a very like weird relationship with, like, they were really touchy feely, and like, you know, he's also married, he's got kids, so it was like that was a weird thing that I obviously I didn't get to experience that until I was there. But then he had an athlete in his stable that wasn't performing well at a specific event, and I saw him like throw his hands up and walk out of the competition area, and that's not what he preaches. He preaches like how you need to be a good coach, you need to be there for their athletes, and you need to make sure that you're there to reinforce them when they're not doing well. And he did the complete opposite.
Right.
And that happened a lot more. I even saw coaches that had athletes that were participating in like an event, and they wouldn't even go to their event.
What?
Wow.
They're at the CrossFit Games. It's kind of like if you need a coach at any point in your life, that might be the time, right?
Right. I was at every event on time, cheering my athlete on, and watching her perform, whether she was last freaking place or there was a couple times where she won her heat. Like, whether she won her heat or was last, I was still on the floor. And it was it was very disheartening to like see, and it kind of sucks as a coach now because, and it's what really motivated me to start like putting out my own content and stuff, is because all that stuff's fake. Like, it's not real.
Yeah.
Like, I legitimately will go to any athlete who asks me to watch them perform, whether they're sucking up the field or they're doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And it really let me down to see the people that have the biggest audiences, that have the biggest following, to just be full of it. It's not true. It's not real. It's not what it's not who they are in person. And so that's my time at the games. And that's something that the host, I'm sure, was like, oh, bro, psycho.
It's probably a good reality check, and
Yeah.
maybe the stress was hitting everybody.
Yeah. And something like when we have, we have athletes that are aspiring to go to the CrossFit Games or what used to be the regionals and stuff like that. And it's a pretty hollow place. Like unless you're like top 5 at the games, you're not getting anything financially from that.
Nope.
If you don't do well, sponsors will drop you. Like, it was just kind of like, what are you doing? What are you doing this for? And unfortunately, I think with the change in the competition season, people are really having to do some digging deep down to be like, why am I doing this? Because it's not like they're out looking out for me or
right,
trying to help me to be better in life if I don't perform well, that is.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Kind of like how I feel like that's how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition would be too. Like, unless you're high up there winning big name tournaments and going to worlds and whatnot, like, there isn't much there. You're risking injury or whatever to pursue something that, I don't know. We talk about it when people come to you and they're like, hey, I want to compete in CrossFit. And you're like, well, why?
Mm.
Like, do you have a legitimate reason why you want to do it?
There has to be a reason there.
Because it's not easy, and it's not easy on your body, right?
No.
Like, to push it to that level to get to where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's as a 41-year-old man, you know, if you wanted to compete in CrossFit, they have the masters, right? So, but those guys are crazy.
You must just have to have a drive for that.
Yeah,
something's got to be pushing you.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's why Cody's like, what is your why? Because we're not going to get into this unless you have a why.
But that's everything, though, right?
Right.
Like, even jiu-jitsu competition, like, you hit on it a little bit too. Like, if you're going to go compete at jiu-jitsu, like, let's be honest, like, CrossFit is something that is going to better your body depending on how you approach your workouts and your training. Jiu-jitsu, like, you went through your accolades of like all your injuries that you had, John.
Yeah.
Like,
shoulder, toe,
yeah,
finger.
like, I was like, dang, like, if I made a list, there's like 5 or 6 things on there. So you got to think about it. You really have to love jiu-jitsu for like a specific reason. And if that reason's not strong enough, is taking your body through the ringer the best option for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, for me, jiu-jitsu is very meditative. It's like, some people can sit and breathe and be quiet and like get inside their mind and quiet things down and get some relaxation from that. When I roll, I don't get anything. Like, nothing else is going through my mind other than, where's my hand go?
Yep.
Where does my foot go? What is he thinking about doing? What am I going to do next? And if that doesn't work, what am I going to do after that?
Right.
And there's nothing else going on. So for me, jiu-jitsu is very meditative. So that's why I would do it. I don't know that I could achieve that same meditation level in a competition, which is why I'm not going to compete.
Right. So let's go back a little bit because you obviously started jiu-jitsu because of MMA. Where are you from, and what made you want to start punching people in the face, man? Like,
so there I was. I hope my friend Paul listens to this because you could say that he's actually the reason that I started jiu-jitsu or I started anything.
Really?
Yeah. So before I joined the military, I will say before I went on deployment, we used to watch UFC.
Right.
That's what we did. That was something my buddy Paul was so into it. He used to watch Ultimate Fighter. That was what he was all about. And we would have a few beers on like most days of the week, like most Navy guys do, right?
Was Paul Navy?
No,
Oh,
he
okay,
was
sorry.
just. I mean, we grew up together.
Yeah.
He just had a baby also.
Yeah, I saw that.
So he actually put me in a guillotine, like near passing out. I didn't even know you should tap out. I was like, he's gonna let go of me, right?
Am I supposed to tap? What is this?
Yeah. And eventually I was like, and then he let me go. But it was so that guillotine is what put in motion.
Wow.
Me doing a combat sport. So we went on deployment. I got into working out heavily. Was doing the bodybuilding thing, and on deployment, the Marines would go. I was on an amphib, so the Marines would be down in the hangar bay, and they would be doing like the Marine Corps martial arts stuff. And it started by me walking by and like, oh, it's pretty cool. There's a bunch of Marines out there, and they're like wrestling, doing all kinds of stuff. And then it went to where like I started sitting and watching. And then it went to where like they would do like open mat times, and I would like I worked out with a couple of the Marines in the I worked out with a couple of the Marines in the gym, and it was like I talk with my hands, so like I do stuff here.
I was working out. With
Sometimes I'm talking and people, I'm like doing this, and people are like looking at my hands, and I'm like
I don't know what to follow.
And I go, yeah. It's just how I am. So we started me jumping in with the Marines, and then they started showing me some stuff. And then when I got back off deployment and had done a bunch of grappling, a bunch of rolling with the Marines, my buddy Paul tried to want some, get some, right?
Not up in here.
Not up in here. And then I armbar crap out of him while we were drunk, and it was awesome. But I was so intrigued by like, hey, look, this little bit of training completely changed the game and how
absolutely
this person can approach me, right? Even though we're just having fun, we're buddies, right? So it went on to like, okay, I'm gonna find a gym, and this led to there was a gym that had actually just opened up around my old house when I lived in Portsmouth, Virginia, and it was called the Eastern Academy of Martial Arts. So at the time, it was ran by Alan, who came here and who had given me my purple belt. He was just a purple belt, and his business partner was a guy named Greg, who ended up being my. Excuse me, man, this beer is
It's making me burp too.
That's
man.
that unfiltered.
Yeah.
So Greg was a 2-stripe blue belt, and Alan was a purple belt. I think he had maybe a 2-stripe or something like that. And they had just opened this gym, and their black belt was a guy by the name of Wase, who was under Salo Hibero, and Salo, I forget. I think he's probably a Hoyler black belt, I think. Anyway, so they were just an up and coming school. The student base was very, very small, so I went in and joined, and it's crazy because it was like $230 a month, and I just started with jiu-jitsu.
$230
I wasn't
a
even
month?
I wasn't even doing Muay Thai with them yet.
They would have lost me.
But I mean, I'm a Navy guy. I pay $400 a month for $400 a month for like rent, and I had roommates and stuff. So anyways, joined this gym, and what was really cool about it is I was in OS in the Navy, right? So
operational specialists, they look at globes.
Basically just stare at a sweeping radar for like hours and hours, and you want to gouge your eyes out. Where was I at? So because it was an up and coming school, there was not a lot of students. They did a 12 o'clock roll, and then they did jiu-jitsu Tuesdays and Thursdays at specific times, which you can see some of the parallels with why we have our schedule, right? It's just all I knew for years. So I would actually go and train twice a day because I get off work at like 10:30 most days as an OS when we were in port. So I would go and essentially just get pummeled by Alan and Greg as a white belt. And then this went on for like a year to 2 years. Then they moved to a bigger location. When they moved to the bigger location, I decided I wanted to get into the stand-up side. Got into the stand-up side, and then that went into where I had my first I decided like I'm gonna fight. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be a cage fighter. And then I had my first fight as a heavyweight, and I smashed the guy. Like it stopped in the first round. Yeah. So it became like, wow, like I'm kind of good at this. I have good attributes for this. I'm gonna keep going with it. So kept fighting, kept doing the thing, and ended up like deciding like, okay, I'm kind of big, but I'm getting pushed around by a lot of guys. And at this time I was training jiu-jitsu. I just got my blue belt, and I was training Muay Thai, and I trained like 6 days a week.
Dang.
And then after my first heavyweight fight, I started going and training with like the bigger guys out in Virginia Beach and stuff like that, just other local amateurs. And I was getting pushed around by a lot of them, which led me to CrossFitting because, bench press, leg press, leg curls, bicep curls just weren't doing it for me. I wasn't getting strong, right? I was still overweight. I actually was still smoking cigarettes at the time. I was still
that life,
drinking, partying, being crazy. And then I'm sorry, this definitely isn't in a nutshell. I apologize.
No.
Okay. So I started losing weight through CrossFitting and stuff like that, and I obviously found a love for that too. And then through CrossFitting and training still, I went down to light heavyweight, and then I started smashing dudes. Like I'm talking stopping
205, right? Like
fighting 205. Yeah, so I walked around about 225, and I would cut to 205. but I was smashing dudes and stopping them within like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Like, I don't know if you guys ever seen like my flicks on YouTube.
I've seen
I stalked it. I watched it. I was like,
So
maybe I learned something.
I was pretty good. Like, I was pretty good as an MMA fighter, and I don't talk about it very often, but I was legit, and I would fully attribute that to like my strength and conditioning through CrossFit.
Yeah.
And then I trained really, really hard, and then Noah was born, and we got to this place where I really, really, really loved training CrossFit.
Yeah.
And getting punched in the face every single day, just being beat up, balancing a 12-hour day job. And at the time, like a 1 and 2 year old, I just decided it wasn't a thing. And then ended up going through some really bad marital stuff. And then through that process, I decided that I want to pursue a business endeavor as a CrossFit coach.
Yeah.
I started training the fight team. Well, I kind of ran the fight team, like just the MMA side, and actually had stopped training a lot of gi jiu-jitsu. I was mostly doing no-gi stuff, a lot of the MMA, like hand fighting, wrestling, catch wrestling type stuff. And then that led to me essentially taking over the strength and conditioning for the fight team. And through that, some of the parents started seeing. Some of the parents were like, what are you guys doing? Like, it looks pretty fun. And then I started training some of the parents. And then eventually it came to a place where, like, I approached Greg, who was my MMA coach, and I was like, what do you think about me starting a CrossFit program at the second story? Because we were in a 2-story building, and the second story was essentially storage. And he was like, let's do it. So like, we're like, swinging kettlebells, dropping barbells upstairs. We're going through the floor. Like, it was crazy.
No way.
Yeah. Ask Van about it. He always talks about, like, they don't know about not being able to drop from overhead. Because we would do like a 225 clean and jerk and couldn't put the bar or couldn't drop the bar. You had to control it to your hip and then down.
That's
right?
funny.
I mean, all things considered, we probably just developed some insane, like, eccentric strength.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I was about to say.
But I got to where, like, I really enjoyed CrossFitting, started competing, and I was going through this bad marital stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm going to hang up the fighting hat, and I'm just going to pursue CrossFitting. And that's when I essentially stopped doing, throughout that time, I had done some Golden Gloves boxing. I had fought in a couple smokers. The smokers were like Muay Thai only. I'd done a bunch of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. I had 8 fights. My last fight that I had was when I dropped down to 185, and had won that belt. Yeah, I got 186. Van actually, so we weighed in at this bar that had like a second story like stage above the bar, and you would weigh in on the scale in front of that. Well, like, I was so drawn out, I had to like get naked. So Van and my buddy Paul had to hold a towel so I could step on the scale in front of the bar and weigh in. And then when we got in the car, Van and Paul like literally hit me with IVs and put the put the IV bag and hung it from like the clothes hanger. Because I was so drawn out. So I went from being 186 to 214 and I smashed that guy, and then essentially that was my last fight. And then
that was when you won the belt, right? I think I saw the
that was the 185 belt. So I had already held the belt at 205 in 2 different organizations in the area, and I dropped down to 185 and won a belt at a new organization that had came into the area. They had this huge event. They called it EFC, and they wanted me to headline it.
What did EFC stand for?
Elite Fighting Championship or something. I actually think they're pretty big now, and they only do professional fights now. So I'd beat up a lot of the amateur guys, and there was one guy that maybe could have challenged me, and he wouldn't fight me. He just would dodge me. So essentially it was like, all right, Cody, you need to go pro, right? You either need to go pro or you need to handle your life stuff. And I was like, all right, I'm going to hang this up and I'm going to pursue CrossFitting. So, fast forward a few years, met my wife, grew the gym, became a serial entrepreneur, and now here I am.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Because I wanted to ask that because I don't think we've ever, because it takes a special person to want to get punched in the face, first of all, especially for fun. And so I was really looking forward to, hearing your story on why you did it, because I don't think I've ever heard you say why. Like, I never knew Paul put you in a guillotine, almost choked you out.
No.
Now, when he gets here, I'm going to be like, Paul, let's get on the mat.
Camo shorts on and a wife beater and choked me out.
And you had the tribal arm tattoo.
I did not have the tribal yet.
You didn't have the tribal yet?
No tribal. I was tribal-less. Yeah.
No comment here.
John
I went to.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That's funny.
Well, I'm glad you went the CrossFit route because you've changed a lot of lives with it.
Yeah.
Oh, man, thank you.
So, Cody, what can you tell me about some tips for the jiu-jitsu strength training and nutrition?
Wow, that's one of those. I saw that, and that's one of those it depends type questions.
Yeah.
It generally speaking, I think, and this is Travis, you and I have actually had a conversation about this recently. This is something I'm going to jump into a little bit later down the road because a simple Google search of like strength training for a jiu-jitsu practitioner, there's nothing. And if it is something, it's like a jiu-jitsu guy trying to say what a jiu-jitsu guy should do.
Right.
It's not a specialist or somebody who, like I religiously study literature and scientific research on like how to build a stronger person nonstop. So there's nobody who does that is around currently. And if you listen to this and you steal my idea, I'm gonna hunt you down and choke you out. But what I'm saying is like there's nobody out there putting out information. Like, could you imagine if there was like a website that you could go to and get workouts, download workouts, get ebooks, look at like a workout of the day for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And it's from a jiu-jitsu guy that is a specialist in strength conditioning.
Yeah.
You know, like imagine what that would look like. So as far as like tips and stuff from there, I think that a jiu-jitsu practitioner should do a CrossFit-like style of training, maybe dialing back some of the intensity and focusing more on compound-based movements like deadlifting, squatting, benching. You should be doing a lot of pulling. And when I say pulling, I'm not talking vertical pulling. I'm talking more horizontal pulling. So things like bent over rows, reverse get bent over rows, landmine rows, dumbbell rows, like any variation that you can do some sort of horizontal pull is going to be great, because what do we do in jiu-jitsu nonstop? It's pulling.
Yeah, you pull collars, lapels.
Pulling, core training, balance work, grip training, a lot of strongman bias stuff, because we do things, we lift people in odd positions. You need to do anti-rotational, anti-movement. You need to do rotational training. Like, there's so many facets of what, man, these burps, man. There's so many facets of like what a jiu-jitsu practitioner could benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not out there. Like the workouts that I used to find when I got into jiu-jitsu, like to get stronger, was always like bodybuilding stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say. Well, because bodybuilding still plays into it. Like a bicep curl can still be somewhat put into jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean?
It could, but it shouldn't be the primary.
No, yeah, absolutely.
And
but
these programs were like revolving around bodybuilding and not enough around these, like, I'm going to say functional training, but that's going to be like, I just talked about that pretty extensively too. Like functional training is going to be relying on what that person's function is.
Yeah.
When I say functional training, just things that are going to mimic their function. And I just think a bicep curl is such a small piece of it, unless you're going to do like an isometric bicep curl when you're just holding that for a period of time, which could be a thing too. And these are all ideas that I have as far as like, how would I build a program for
don't give away everything.
You're great ideas, because I've done these searches.
Yeah.
I couldn't find anything except animal movements.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, that's not going to work.
There's a thing that Salo and Shanji Ribeiro have called gymnastica something, but it's like it's like calisthenic body weight yoga style stuff, but it's strength training. And it's not, because like if you're going to get stronger, really, if we're talking about like how to develop real strength, you have to go get some sort of resistance.
Yeah.
It has to be your body overcoming a load or resistance.
Right.
Well, how are you going to do that when you just, at a certain point, your body's going to adapt to your body weight? It's just how it is. Which, can you get a good level of health and fitness from that? Absolutely. But if you're trying to develop a high level of strength that is going to be relative to making you a better jiu-jitsu practitioner, these are the things and the principles that you have to surround your training with.
Yeah.
And John, you get a good amount of that from CrossFit, and so do you, Travis, which is why you guys probably do better than most as far as like lasting longer, being able to hold things for much longer.
Yeah.
But I think there's like if you think of it like a scale, like you got the two sides, right? There's a certain point where too much intensity for like a jiu-jitsu person is too much, because I think there's a certain level of conditioning that you need. And then once you attain that, you have to make sure that you're maintaining your strength levels too.
Yeah.
And when you're very versed in one level of conditioning, you're going to give up strength. And when you work only on strength, you give up conditioning. I think there needs to be a balance there, and it's something that I am interested and intrigued on. I was talking to my business coach about this 2 weeks ago, and he was like, you know, because I always have like 1,000 ideas.
Yeah, you're like nerding out on him. He's like, okay, just write it down.
Like, I got it. He's like, write it down. He's like, why don't you make a voice memo? There's literally a voice memo on my phone, just reminding me of these principles and these things, because I'm telling you, I'm going to launch it. And I was thinking big picture the other day, like, who would I reach out to that's a big time practitioner and say, I'm going to give you this program. I just want you to talk about it. I know it's going to be good. I'm very confident in what I do. So it's like, can I get the right people to talk about it so that I can get it in the hands of more jiu-jitsu practitioners to finally give them something to do outside of the gym?
Yeah. No, I think it's such a great idea. We talked about it for probably about, 30, 45 minutes the other day at the gym. And because I was thinking, like, I would love to write programming for someone that wants to get better at jiu-jitsu, because I feel obviously strength is a huge part of jiu-jitsu, right? Like, you can have flexibility, but you also need strength, right?
Yeah.
Like, you need to be able to hold like static positions. You need to be able to have good core strength. You need to be able to pull something or break a grip or something like that. And you're not going to do that with just straight yoga or calisthenics or something like that.
Which I'm going through right now. You know, I did the CrossFit pretty regularly. then went to the jiu-jitsu. Didn't think I could do both, so I stopped with the CrossFit after the stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed over the last 6-7 months, I progressively noticed my game getting weaker in jiu-jitsu because I stopped the CrossFit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's what people say about that, right? They're like, that means you didn't rely on your technique. But here's where that's flawed and that's wrong. And what I'll argue all day with somebody about this. I don't care if you're a 62 stripe black belt. I'm going to tell you that you're full of crap, because when a person is strong and then they are the same level, or they know jiu-jitsu and they're going against a person that's not strong, the strong
Strength
person is either going to balance it out and give them fits, or they're going to win.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Like, I have beaten so many people, or I'm going to say beats, but I have submitted tons of belts that are over me. Here, Virginia, doesn't matter. And I've been doing it for years because I've always prioritized my strength training. I've always prioritized my conditioning.
Yeah.
Either I outlast them and submit them when they're fatigued, or I submit them surely out of, I have okay tech. Well, back then I had okay technique. My technique is a lot better now.
Yeah.
But I'm also stronger now. Back then I had okay technique. I didn't rely on just strength, but just by, like, if I grab somebody by the lapel and I stiff arm and I just hold them there, they're not moving. And it's not that like, oh, I'm so strong. Like Phil's stronger than me, right? But I'm still able to hold him there because there's a certain level of strength that allows me to hold that position, plus my technique. So that maybe used to be true of like, technique's going to overcome anything. That was true when the other person didn't know jiu-jitsu.
Right, yeah.
Now, if you have a basic understanding of the principles and concepts behind jiu-jitsu,
absolutely,
you're going to beat that person that doesn't train. Just plain and simple.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that I feel like I'm overcoming the most right now is I don't want to be reliant on my strength. You know what I mean? And Billy talks about it with me because Billy is a 55-year-old man. We talk about him all the time. He's going to be on the podcast next week.
He'll be a good show.
He's going to be a great show.
He's going to show up with an index card. I already told you that.
I cannot wait, right? But like I said, like, he's an older gentleman, incredible mobility and flexibility, right? But he's like, look, man, don't feel bad about having strength. He's like, I have mobility. I can't turn off my mobility and flexibility. You can't turn off your strength. He's like, all you can do is just harness it, just try to apply it in a better way, in a more efficient way, instead of trying to rip someone's shoulder or something like that, So
it's like I like to think of it like the Donnie Schenkel used to say with Olympic lifting, is it's controlled aggression.
Yeah.
So you control it until you need to explode. Like there's a lot of times, sometimes where like I will make a burst or an explosion, and for a second I'm like, oh man, maybe I used too much strength. But it's just me moving fast.
Yeah.
Moving fast doesn't mean that I'm trying to. You can definitely tell the difference. If I'm in a competition, I'm going to try to rip somebody's head off, and I'm going to give it everything.
Yeah.
But in training, because I use it for such a mental, like I actually use jiu-jitsu for like mental health for me. Like, because I use jiu-jitsu in that manner, I can know in my own mind and how I am that I am not bursting to use strength. I am bursting simply because that is the art of jiu-jitsu that I am using at that current time.
Yeah, that's a good way.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit of how it's like therapeutic for you and like meditative.
Mm-hmm.
And what is your attitude? And we use mindset a lot, but like, what is like your attitude and mindset of when you start? You know what I mean? Like when you're getting on the mat,
what's going through his mind?
What's going through your mind? Like, because obviously, like you said, it's a lot of it is just where does my hand go and whatnot, but like in between or before you roll with someone or spar with someone and you know who they are, are you thinking of like, well, I know that they like to pass left, so I'm gonna hold them left or hold them right or whatever, and then
so you're talking me now, or are you talking like me when I started?
Well, right for this question right now, and then I was gonna get into, well, when you first started, what would you tell them now that you know when your white belt Cody Smith don't know nothing, you know what I mean? But as of right now, how do you see things, and what would you tell your white belt self?
So I would tell my white belt self to be patient and enjoy my time.
Yeah.
Because here's what people do, and I was guilty of this. A lot of people are guilty of this. They start jiu-jitsu, and the first thing they think is, how quickly can I get to black belt?
Yeah.
How quickly can I do that? And then there's this like technique chasing thing where like you're watching YouTube nonstop.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that and that and that and that and that and that. Like you can learn any amount of moves you want, but if you don't know how to apply the concepts and the principles, you'll just be a movement collector instead of learning how to, through principles, lace different movements together. To know that A1 goes to A2, but A2 could also go to B, could go to B1, could go to B2. Like, to know, like I posted that flow chart on the Instagram for the gym the other day.
Yeah.
Like that's literally what goes on inside of a higher level jiu-jitsu person's mind, is like, I know, because I know this entire web and this entire flow, I know that this movement's going to send me here. So what I would tell my younger self is just be more patient with the growth of jiu-jitsu and grow the correct way. Because if you rush that, like, I just think there's a prerequisite amount of time that every person should spend. And I don't know what that time is. It's going to be different from person to person. But I believe that there's a prerequisite amount of time that a person should spend learning the art, learning the fundamentals and the concepts, and then learning how to move. And actually, I'm pretty against like a white belt competing to do competitions. I don't think, because you see sometimes like schools will use competition as like a means to rank somebody. I don't think you learn anything in competition. You learn how to go crazy. Like the jiu-jitsu competitions are crazy.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's strength, it's explosion, it's jumping, it's crazy, it's fast paced. I think actually, and maybe there's a high level jiu-jitsu person that wants to argue with this about me, but I think it's a sideshow thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't think that competition for jiu-jitsu at a certain level is worth anything.
Yeah.
So I would tell my younger self, long story short, to just be patient and to take my time.
Yeah.
Because I always tried to rush it, and I would rush it and take 5 steps forward. And because I didn't learn the principles and the concepts, and I didn't learn how to do simple things like, okay, I feel that pressure. Like if I'm going to do an elbow escape, I feel that he is going to either jump off and go knee to belly, or he's going to lean forward slightly to reach into my collar or to do a head wrap. And instead of toning in and trying to feel that to know I can elbow escape, I would try to do some crazy move I saw on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and I completely missed the pressure and the feeling of what certain positions feel like. And I don't do that anymore. So that's why I know that, like, that's what I would tell myself, because now I really try to think, I'll try to reverse engineer everything everybody's doing all the time.
Yeah.
And I actually don't focus so much on winning in training anymore. It's like,
same.
It's like, what did I gain today? And lately for me, it's like I'm trying different things. I'm getting out of my comfort zone. I'm playing possum a lot. I'm letting somebody start in a more dominant position because I'm very confident in a dominant position, but I'm not very confident in a playing possum position because I'm never there.
Right.
Unless I allow myself to be. So that's something so I would tell myself to be patient, long story short, and to take my time, because there's no rush. Just take your time.
It's zero. Like you said, if you rush it, you're probably gonna miss something.
I hate the possum position.
Yeah,
I don't even know how to start.
But you're learning stuff from it. You really are. Because you're gonna play possum against a guy like me, or
no, I mean, I don't know how to attack someone when they're laying in the possum position.
Oh.
I'm like,
in Japan,
you just threw me off.
In Japan,
why aren't you fighting back?
Yeah, I'm like,
It's like, is there something wrong?
I think it's because I base my decisions on what you're doing,
Right.
and when you're not doing anything, it throws me all off.
So when I say possum, though, I'm not saying like I lay there dead.
Yeah.
I just don't attack.
Right.
Yeah, you let them come to you.
Correct.
So the first experience that John and I both got with that, because before we went to Japan, it was pretty much you, George, and Professor, right? And all you guys were aggressive. You know, they're like, I was like, I had a knee on belly before I even realized it. You know what I mean? So, but when we got to Japan, the first time we were rolling with like the purples, browns, they would sit there, and I'm like, are we gonna do this?
Yeah.
Like, we've already slapped and bumped fists. And then I would go to grab collar, and all of a sudden I'm getting tapped. You know what I mean? It's like so.
I can see the trap.
Yeah, I didn't see it, dang it, right? And it was because I was so worried about like pushing forward and trying to get something, and they're like, I know exactly what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you get to that position, and then boom, And to tell you the truth, the thing that probably changed my game the most was watching John, because as a older gentleman, he would get on the bottom and he wouldn't get tapped. He would just sit there and defend the whole time.
John does survive.
He does, and
I try to survive.
And so I would be getting caught in arm bars. You would get me in a darce like once a week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe 2-3 times in a roll. And I started like watching John seriously. Like, what is he doing that he is surviving all these guys that I'm not doing? Right? Like he was just relaxed. Like he would get on his back and he's like, all right, well, I guess I'll just hang out here until I can get out of it. And then towards the end of Japan is when I really started just hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey man, if I get in a bad position, there's no reason to put myself in a worse position. Just hang out and just see what happens.
You know what Elio Gracie said that a long time ago that I really loved, and it's like, it's kind of like, to me it's like this crazy like voodoo like Buddhist type like thought, but he's like, when I start a match with my opponent, I immediately start taking their energy. And I don't think that means like he's demolishing them. I think what he means by that is he relaxes and he's patient.
Yeah.
Because like if you rush anything, nutrition, training, jiu-jitsu, life, relationships, like if you rush anything, eventually something's going to break because you didn't allow it to grow organically.
Yes.
So why I love that so much, and what, John, you're gaining right now is the ability to just relax and to move. That's going to pay huge dividends because, and I said this to Mike at the gym also when we first started. He was like, I feel like I'm just always getting beat. I'm like, you're not going to be able to feel that contrast until you go with somebody who's new at the gym.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're like, oh, wow, like all of that, me getting the crap kicked out of myself has really paid dividends with how my jiu-jitsu is and how I am as a practitioner now, because I'm so used to being in a surviving position that I'm so good at surviving that now that I can attack.
Yeah.
And it's a hard concept for people to hear when they first start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we definitely mentioned that as well when we got to Japan, because Japan was the first time that we like trained someone outside of our school.
That was interesting.
And I'm not even gonna lie to you, like those guys were so legit out there. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Like their knowledge, their technique and stuff. It was awesome. Great experience. But I would attribute like why we did so well out there is because we did roll against you, right? And like we did roll against Professor and George when he was a blue belt, and George, is a very high level, now is a purple belt, and he's a very high level technical guy. And we would just get our butts kicked every day, right? Every time we'd roll. And so when we got to Japan and we started rolling with newer white belts, I was like, well, I'm so used to Cody just smashing me. You know what I mean? Like I kind of know a little bit, but and once again, it goes to watching John and seeing how he works, and it was a big eye opener, and then coming back, and it was like, well,
I think the CrossFit background too. We heard a lot while we were over there that
we're
me and him
strong.
were really stronger than everyone else there. They mentioned it every time, and even when I went,
still get it today. Like,
well, I just went and rolled, at a different gym in town, and when I was rolling there, one of the black belts kept talking to me after the matches, and he was like, you just gotta slow down a little, but that was really not me going.
Yeah.
Wasn't me going like a lot. That was kind of average for me at our gym. So I don't know if that's a difference where for some places, I just don't know if the CrossFit has just made it where our halfway is a little.
Yeah. Well, when Professor Allen came here, that's what I don't know if you guys remember him saying that, but he's like, you guys are all so strong. You guys are gonna be all so legit. And this goes even more to like my thought on what a jiu-jitsu person should do for training, because you guys are living proof of like what a strong person with jiu-jitsu feels like. Yeah. Who's good with technique and who is also strong and
you say I'm good with technique?
Oh. I mean, slightly above average. But you know what I mean, though. Like, absolutely. You guys have a level of technique that definitely plays in is 100% applicable to your strength and your conditioning. And when those things work together, you feel like you need to quote unquote slow down. When really you're, like you said, I'm just kind of going like normal. I'm not really pushing too much.
Yeah, that's like the situation with you in Japan, right? Is like he got yelled at by a higher belt because they thought he was going super hard on them. And he's like, I was literally going like 30, 40%. Like I was just flowing with it and whatnot. And it's probably because stronger guy, older guy, right? And then some ego got in the way and whatnot too. But we talk about how our 40% could be someone's 110%, or it could be someone's 80%. You know what I mean? Like we just don't know.
We try to be aware of it.
Yeah, I try to be aware of it, and we talked about it too. Like I really need to just at the beginning of rolls is kind of like, hey, if at any point like you feel like I'm going too hard, just let me know, and I can back off. Like I don't have to go hard. It's
to me, too hard's kind of weird because you can always tap. I don't know if there is a too hard.
Yeah, you talk about that all the time. Like
is
there
really
feeling
over?
Yeah. And so here, like with all that, this is what I believe to be true, right? So usually a person can feel like when a lower belt is really going at them.
Yeah.
or
absolutely.
Like really wants it. Yep. Like you said something before about the dog, like the dog with the treat, right?
Yep.
Or a dog with a toy, like that. When a person doesn't do like any sort of strength training and they're going at it, I think that feels a lot like to a upper belt. That feels a lot like what just a stronger person with skills feels like.
Yeah.
So because those two things are blurred and there's not a lot of strength training inside of jiu-jitsu, because there's not a lot of that, and this upper belt feels that, he's confused because he sees the two things and he thinks they're the same thing and they're not.
Yeah.
Because you're just a strong guy with skills. That's it. And I think there's this paradigm that people have to understand that, especially people that are outside the strength and conditioning community, that when you're going with somebody that's strong and conditioned, it's going to feel like a white belt who's got their dog toy.
Yeah.
You know, when it's
Right.
it's actually not it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think like strength is awesome, man. Like I tell you before, like I've never been the strong guy before, and like when people tell me like you're strong or whatever, it's weird, you know, because really I'm just trying to just do the stuff that you told me to do, but it's, you know, it's just it's kind of weird to have that conversation with people and multiple times having the conversation.
And just inside of our gym and other gyms you've been to, how many of those guys are actually conditioned?
No, that's true, right?
Not.
So I went to Hensel Gracie school in Portland, and I rolled with a larger black or blue belt. And after the roll, he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "You know, you're pretty good." He's like, "I would just tell you to calm down. You don't need to be so sporadic." I'm like, dude, I literally was like,
Yeah.
and this was like us doing jujitsu at like 4 or 5 months, right?
Yeah.
So I probably was a little sporadic, but it definitely not as bad as he thought it was. And go to your point, it's like maybe he confuses the two of, you know, the dog with the treat, and like he's just going for
You're,
it.
like, shaking your head
yeah,
back
just
and
shaking
forth.
the head back and forth. But you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
So speaking of like positions and stuff like that, and what's your like favorite? Like, what is your go-to position? Like, if you get that, it's
and the defense too.
yeah, in the defense. And how often do you
No.
go to it? What are the cues that go into it so we can see this?
There's like 3 questions in there. So question 1 was what my favorite position was.
Yeah, like what's your favorite position?
I said something inappropriate a minute ago. Is this an explicit podcast?
Yeah, no, it's not. No.
Okay. I'm a big fan of the knee on belly side body combination.
I can attest to that.
Yeah,
I can agree to that.
If you would asked me like 5-6 years ago before I started jiu-jitsu again, I would have told you the guard. But now I really feel at home in side body, and I'll stay there sometimes and attack just because I feel so comfortable there. I like the mobility that you have when you're in side body and knee on belly, because I can jump from side to side. I can go north-south. I can Toriano, go around the other side. Like there's so many options available to you. You can attack collar choke. You can go far side armbar, wrist locks, kimuras, step over triangles, step over. One of my favorite combinations, you talked about this, was like stepping over, getting you to push my arm back, and then either jumping to arm triangle or Darce. So we're talking there's 3 outlets there.
Yep.
Or I could reverse triangle you from you not pushing my leg back.
Yeah.
So there's so many options available to me on side body. What was the second one? What's the defense to that?
Yeah, you don't have to tell us.
No,
Yeah,
I was just teasing you on that one.
Yeah.
So one of the guys that we follow, Roy Dean,
Mhm.
his professor is Roy Harris, and he's a 4th degree black belt. And he talks about side control, and he's like, the side control is probably the most dominant position.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
like, because if you go for an Americana and it fails, where are you at? You're still in side control.
Yeah.
If you go for a Kimura in side control and it fails, where you at? You're still in the dominant position.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I started thinking about that, and John has a great side control right now. Like he hugs me. There's a picture on Graham right now.
I should have been on my toes. I saw that picture and I was like, I'm glad they posted it. My position was wrong. I even said it.
Yeah.
I like it. I like
No,
it.
but side control, man, it's a hard one to do, especially when
Right.
someone locks you down or gets a meat. Dude, I'm telling you right now, Cody, your neon belly was like my kryptonite. It was like,
This is brutal.
it was terrible. You would go neon belly on me, and I'm like, I think my soul is like over there.
You know
I
what's
should
funny
probably
about
go
that
get
too is that so you told me that I should listen to the show, and I just hadn't yet. It's
Yeah.
not that I had already subscribed, and I actually unsubscribed and show you that I subscribed again yesterday so you could see it. But the neon belly, when I do it to people, still, I don't know that I've actually done neon belly with the mission to be to apply a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It's like usually my foot is still in the ground.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And the only person I've actually put neon belly on is Phil, and that's when he has me in that lockdown position.
Dude, that lockdown position is
and
crazy.
so I'll do far side neon belly, and I'll literally grab his belt in the back of his collar, and I'll pull him, and I'll drive my knee. It's the only way he lets go. So if you guys are looking to get out of his lockdown position, or if you get put in a lockdown position, do a far side neon belly, grab belt, grab behind the head to the collar, and then do like, again, we talk about rowing, do a row or a lat pull, and then drive the point of your knee into that person's sternum. They're going to let go, or they're going to want to tap out from the pressure. Yeah, you can literally feel the life coming out of somebody's body. Just this, and you know they don't want nothing more than to get that knee out of their chest.
I just want to let you know, since Phil showed us the lockdown stuff back in the day, I go to lockdown all the time.
You lock me down, I'm gonna tap you out with a knee on the chest.
You go there, and this is what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Play
You already know it's
simple.
coming.
Yeah.
Phil won't even do it anymore. He won't even try
He
to hold
won't.
on to it. No.
He'll
put it on and he'll film me step over and he's like, whoop, and he lets go really
he's
fast.
like tapping over.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I got, or Phil got me in. Phil's one of our coaches. He's a blue belt at our gym. Also, if you guys don't know who he is, but he's a larger man. 500-pound back squat, 500-pound deadlift,
500-pound everything.
just 500-pound everything.
Yeah.
And just you like touch him, and you're like, all right, this guy's legitimately solid. You know, there's like
He basically grabbed a
very
wall.
solid.
yeah. But so he would get those behemoth of legs around your leg in a lockdown position, and he went for an electric chair one day on me, and instead of doing an electric chair, he gave me a calf slicer. He squeezed so hard, dude. I was like, it's not my groin, it's my calf. It hurts so bad. It hurts so bad.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like your go-to move is then? If do you think it's the side control to the variations that you have, or I see you doing a lot of lapel stuff right now.
Yeah, I have a chain of things that I do. I mainly like side control. And this is even more my point on like why you should be patient, why you should do fundamentals and concepts and learn the beginner stuff. Because literally my go-to right now is a far side armbar from side control or a bread cutter choke from the side body. It's simple. It's simplistic.
Yeah.
Or getting my other go-to recently is coming from that. And I don't know if you guys remember, I showed it a long time ago, the mission control position.
Mm-hmm.
So going from mission control to like a smash pass and then finishing a bread cutter coming out of the smash pass is like my go-to right now. And it's simplistic. There's nothing fancy. Like this is probably the only issue I have with a lot of coaching is that sometimes we show too much advanced stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like why doesn't everybody
we'll go
know?
over that too.
Yeah, like, and I've actually, when you guys talked about it, I was like, you're right, because it's like, even us, we're guilty of it. We have a competition class, but our Monday class says it's beginner, advanced, mixed. It's not. Like, we should be showing, and it's not like I'm going to go and coach it, and Al is so much more smart than me, so I'm sure he has an amazing plan. That dude is thinks of everything. But if there's one thing I think every school could probably do a little bit better, is always reestablish fundamentals and concepts.
Absolutely.
Like you shouldn't learn how to do any sort of rolling anything or any sort of jumping anything until you know how to properly do a 3-step triangle or a 3-step armbar or an Americana or a straight arm lock.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't, or a armbar from mount. We were talking after the competition and the question was posed like, where are we weak at? And I was like, hip escape, elbow escape, how to escape a headlock, things that you should learn day one, right? And it's because like we have such a small school, we don't have the ability to run like a fundamentals class per se.
Yeah, agreed.
So it's like, I think as we develop as a school and we get a little bit bigger and we get more coaches on board, we can start to break off and do that. I would love it if so I like think of it like with our gym, like with our coaching staff, when we do a meeting, I call it the meeting pulse. Like the meeting pulse should be rhythmic. It should be something that we meet fairly often in a good rhythmic manner, right? I think there should be a rhythmic approach to learning fundamentals in jiu-jitsu, the same way we teach the air squat all the time, the same way we teach how to do things in CrossFit fundamentally all the time. I think all jiu-jitsu schools can do that. But jiu-jitsu as a whole is a lot like, I always talk about, man, this Leinenkugel is getting me with this burps.
Oh,
man.
I know, man. We got real beer downstairs after this if you want some.
This is a real beer? So I look at like all of these traditional martial arts. So with jiu-jitsu in business, with jiu-jitsu as a sport, with boxing, they all have this thing of like, my sensei does this, so this is how I'm going to teach later on. Or my black belt taught this way, I'm going to teach his method. Whereas like they haven't evolved to being like Bruce Lee like was such a forward thinker because he's like, my style is like the style without styles, the art of fighting without fighting. I see something I want, I use it. If it doesn't work, I discard it.
Yeah.
I think with jiu-jitsu, we should be doing the same things, right? Instead of just teaching jiu-jitsu the way it's always been taught by our person, I think it needs to be like a hybrid of that, of like, what does my school need? What does our member base need? How can I always reapproach and evolve my level of teaching and coaching and how I even present something? Because I think sometimes as a whole, like I've gone to some seminars where like they'll do a whole bunch of technique and they'll be like, you good? Okay, go ahead and try it. And I'm like,
yeah.
Are you kidding
I feel like
me?
that in class.
Yeah.
But
it's like, and if there's something I feel that every jiu-jitsu teacher can do is, And sometimes I feel like I could go to some of the old jiu-jitsu schools that I used to go to and teach their coaches how to coach. But because old traditional ways are because I'm just a purple belt, I can't tell a black belt how to do their job better. And I get there's this whole respect tradition factor. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of teachers, a lot of professors that could learn how to articulate their message and their techniques better.
Yeah.
And in a better, more slowed down step-by-step process. So that instead of the high achiever jiu-jitsu students in all these schools, the lowest person could also understand the same way the highest person did. And maybe it's a little slow for the higher person, but what if they get a more thorough grasp or understanding of that technique, and the beginner gets something amazing to where they can do it on their own too?
Yeah.
You know, and the old school way of thought is like, jiu-jitsu's always been taught this way, so it's going to be taught this way. Boxing's always been done this way. Like, boxers never do any sort of strength training or anything like that. It's mitts, sparring, bag work, and running. They're completely against weight training. I try to train a couple of the professional boxers at my old school. Like when we had a boxing program for a little bit, I try to present like, let me do their strength conditioning for free. Let me do it. And the coach is like, no, it's going to make them bulky and slow. And I'm like you just haven't caught up to it. And I think that's also jiu-jitsu too, like how they teach, how they approach, a lot of them don't do strength training. Could you imagine some of these massively, like these dudes that are like the Mendez brothers, if those guys trained strength and conditioning and they were strong and they were like, they're already technical monsters. Could you imagine if they were technical monsters and they were strong?
They had a core fundamental understanding of strength and conditioning. Like,
and they could express it.
Yeah.
You know, like they do amazing techniques. What if they did that amazing technique and their positions were solid?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that'd be such a different thing. So on that line, being open to evolution is something, I don't even know how we got on this rant, but like being open to evolution is something that every jiu-jitsu school, every jiu-jitsu coach, every jiu-jitsu professor, and here I am, a little purple belt, what do I know? I know coaching more than half of the world does, a lot better than they do, and I really feel that's something that all of them can benefit from.
That's a good comment on the belts, because when I promote, the gym and I have people ask me, well,
what belt are you?
Well, who's coaching and what is their belt level?
Yeah.
I that's like the first thing they ask me.
Instead of how do they present their information?
Yeah.
And what I forget what movie it is. I always screw this up. I always butcher this. But like the gist of it is like you could teach somebody as long as you're a chapter ahead of them in the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, and you actually retain it a little bit. So me coaching and running jiu-jitsu when we first opened made me better than I've ever been at jiu-jitsu. Because how do you learn something? You learn it, you read it first, you do it, or you teach it.
Yep.
I think there's one more in there. I forget what it is. But essentially, I got to learn something 3 times. Right, every single time I did it, and I actually see that now, and it's why I've actually started doing the 1230 a lot and like being there to coach it, because it allows me to get a deeper understanding of the techniques that I'm currently working. I literally just learn for myself, and then I show Phil or Ashley or Thor when they're there during the day.
Yeah,
and it allows me to learn again. So on that note, like, who cares what belt you are?
Yeah,
like,
I always thought it was funny because I was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm getting destroyed." Like, you can bring in a blue belt to coach me, and I will be happy to get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's the traditional thought process.
Yeah.
It actually really upsets me a lot.
There's a Gordon Ryan. He's like a big name no-gi guy, and he had an Instagram post, and it was like all world-class black belts. Not all world-class black belts are world-class teachers. Like, just because you hold the belt doesn't mean you know how to articulate your technique or whatever. And it goes to, like, when we did our CrossFit Level 2, how many people have been doing CrossFit for years in that CrossFit Level 2? How many people were gym owners that couldn't explain how to do a proper air squat?
Right.
You know what I mean? And we're, like, sitting there like, you literally have 100 clients and you don't know what you're talking about. And when you get in front of people that know what they're talking about, and you try to fake it, it's as plain as daylight. You know what I mean? So, I enjoy coaching, and like you said, like now that I'm coaching again, like my technique's starting to get better.
Yeah.
Like in class, like CrossFit class, I don't coach jiu-jitsu.
Right.
But like in our jiu-jitsu class, they kind of mention like, hey, if you're a white belt, kind of lay low to the side. Don't be giving technique, and I understand, right? Because you don't want.
I know. I found myself helping somebody out this morning.
I know.
I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
So here, on that note, though, like the reason why that call was made is more often than not, a high percentage of people that are giving advice as white belts are giving the wrong advice.
Yeah, they don't know. And that's what I was saying. Like I was about to say is like, which is completely understandable because we joke about it too.
Yeah.
Like I'm not giving. I'm just telling them like what it feels like to me. Like maybe you should
elbows
try
tight,
this.
elbows tight.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's some things where I'm like, they're like, how does that feel? What can I fix? I'm like, you said that though?
Yeah.
You know, because like on some of the stuff we do, I have no idea. Like,
Yeah.
I barely understand it as it is. Like, but body awareness and body mechanics, I have a kind of a firm understanding with from the years of coaching and strength training and whatnot. So trying to articulate that to someone without coaching them in class now is kind of like, well, I think you can pull me a little bit tighter, and then someone comes over like, I didn't say that. I didn't.
You know what I'd like to see? I would like to see, instead of it just being like you go to a seminar and you learn more technique, what if there was a coaching seminar? So we're like,
jiu-jitsu?
like
That'd be good. That would be.
It's not like it's always about technique. Go get this new technique. Go get this new style. Like what if there was a coaches professor development school where you go and you learn how to, so like things that matter more than anything in the world is being able to read a person, being able to communicate well with them and read their body language. But more than that, being able to tell stories and get them to buy in on what you're saying will get a deeper understanding for that person, right? So what if there was a seminar, and you steal my idea, you know what's going to happen. So what if there was,
I was about to say, don't tell everything, Cody. Don't tell everything.
No, it is what it is. I don't have enough time to do any of this stuff right now. But like, what if there was a seminar that would develop a coach and not teach them any technique? Because answer this question. Like, what if there was a coach that knew 100 different techniques and couldn't articulate it well, or a person that knew 10 techniques and could articulate them better than anybody?
This sounds like our level 2.
Right.
It sounds exactly like our level 2 because in our level 2 there was 0 movements that you shouldn't already know as a coach.
9 foundational movements.
The 9 foundational functional movements of CrossFit is all we went over. There was nothing else. There was no like split jerk. It was just a simple jerk. It was, I believe we went over a split jerk. They didn't even go into split jerks. They didn't even go in depth in technique for the movements. Just the basic understandings of, can you tell a brand new person or even another experienced coach what they're doing wrong or how to do a simple movement, right? Because if you can't get your message across, it's going to get lost in you know, on the way to them. If you don't know how to tell someone how to fix something or how to, what is it? We have the three methods of coaching or correcting. It's
visual, verbal, tactile.
Yeah, visual, verbal, tactile, and it's the same thing for jiu-jitsu, right? We have a whole lot of visual technique, or
I would say it's mostly visual. I think it's
mostly visual, right? Mm-hmm. And then every now and then we get a little bit of verbal. Hey, move this here. I don't think I've ever had someone come over, put my hands in the right spot or put my legs in the right spot for a tactile cue to let me know what it's supposed to feel like or where it's actually supposed to go.
I've had George come over and grab mine and move.
Oh, has he?
But I think, Cody, you've done it a couple times too.
Yeah.
That's the best way I learn. If I'm doing
Tactile?
it wrong, just put me in the right spot.
Yeah.
And then I'll know where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, you'll know exactly what it feels like, where it's at, how I'm supposed to do this. You know what I mean? So I relate jiu-jitsu because my core understanding of fitness is fitness coaching.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and there's so much parallel between the two. It's easy to talk about CrossFit and then get passionate about it and then have the same passion for jiu-jitsu because it's strength, technique, core understanding of body awareness and what you're supposed to be doing and when you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's literally back and forth. You know what I mean?
So when we first started jiu-jitsu and I was running the gym and I was coaching by myself and then George came, I fully knew that I didn't have a very deep understanding of jiu-jitsu. I had like blue belt level knowledge in jiu-jitsu, but where I think I excelled was how I explained it and how I broke it down, the way that I presented it to the team every day and the way that we drilled it and the way that we would spar using it. That's what I think we did really, really well. Where we really benefited and really lucked out is Al is great at articulating. What he does that I can't do or I could never do was describe all the whys behind it. I could say this technique works. You should put this there. This is how you should move your body to get to that position and place this there and place this there and place this there. He'll do that. Place this there, place this there. This is why, because if you don't and you don't have the pressure here and you don't have your hand here and you don't do this little wrist tweak here, like
I was just about to mention the wrist tweak.
That's
ratchet.
Yes,
I
the
told him.
ratchet strap.
So that was
the aha moment.
That's the
for me,
black
bro.
belt level of being able to articulate that you can tell if that person's quality or not, or if that person's a good coach or not. If they just ramble off technique and go, and you're left by yourself, then they are a good level, but they're a novice coach.
Yeah.
They're
And-
a novice person at coaching it.
And that was the moment for me where I was like, holy crap, man. There's like so many nuances.
Yeah.
Like if you guys don't know what we're talking about, when you go to grab someone's grip, whether it's a sleeve, lapel, collar, whatever it is, their pants, if you grab them, gripping the material, put a little bit of a twist in your wrist, and it is so much stronger. Al showed us that, and I have never not gripped like that. If I get a grip on you, there's a twist in my wrist, like a monkey wrench. It's like, and it's a game changer. Like, it's so much harder to break a grip when they have that little bit extra in it. And I was like watching Cody's eyes wide open after he said
I remember that too.
Yeah, Cody was like,
Because now when I grab a
dang,
person,
that was a good one.
now when I grab a person's collar, they don't go anywhere.
They don't. No,
You move when I let go.
Yeah, I was about to say, I grab people's sleeves, and I very rarely ever get anyone to break my grips. You know what I mean? And I'm holding on for dear life, too. I'm like, I can't let this go. I can't let this go. This is my toy right now.
Yeah.
So
I stole your grip collar move, and everyone winces when I do it now.
yeah.
It's like my
Did you
go-to.
have you experienced that yet?
What's that?
The baseball. What is it called? The what's the
You
choke
watched
called?
it from Roy Harris, right?
Yeah, Roy Harris.
Where
But
you get the hand real deep in the collar and you kind of turn it, and the knuckles go into the side.
yeah,
right
so
here.
you have your carotid right here, and you have a nerve in your neck. And what you do is you grab collar, take all the slack out, put the collarbone in between the two knuckles, your pinky and your ring finger, and then you turn your knuckles in towards that nerve that's in the neck.
hurts.
I never done it.
Oh,
No, I don't do that.
let me tell you, if you guys are at home, you should try that on your significant other.
Yeah,
I'm just
go-
kidding. Do not
go-
do that.
Go grab your wife's collar right now.
Yeah, so-
Or your husband.
or your husband,
Yeah.
or you whatever. So, all right. Well, I think that was a good episode.
That was good.
man.
How long do we go?
We're at right now a little over an hour.
Wow.
So
Wow.
That
Time
was
flies when you're
good.
having fun.
yeah, right. So, hey, Cody, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today, man.
Thanks for
It's really
having me.
Appreciated. We're definitely looking forward to having this one. There's a couple more people that we're super ecstatic about having on. You were definitely one of my top ones up there. So thank you for
Hey,
making
thanks
the
for
drive
having
out
me,
here.
man. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
You're definitely in the top 5.
Yeah.
Oh.
Don't forget.
It's
to
nice to be
promote
top
this.
5.
Yeah. It's like MySpace days. You
We're
were
on
my top
episode.
5.
We're on episode 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, hey, I just want to say thanks again to Cody. Thanks for John for coming out. You guys have a good night. There's no oil checks here, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.